In this playthrough, you will learn about the following. First, we need to understand how rockets get from point A to point B using conservation of momentum. Learning this physics will not only help us understand physics, but it will also help us understand how far these rockets can go. Secondly, we're going to cover very basic orbital travel, getting from point A to point B through orbits. But what are our goals for the playthrough? Simply put, we need to get to the Mun. Now, this planet here is called Kerbin. This is where Kerbals are from. Kerbals love to launch rockets into space, and we will be going to here. This is pretty much their allegory. If this was Earth, this is their moon. Our goal is to go from here to there and back. But first, before we do that, we need to understand how these rockets work. The rocket shoots exhaust out of the back of it and thus launches particles at high speed away from it. If we look at this as though it were an explosion happening over and over again, we should know the rocket's velocity using momentum. We start with this first equation, which just demonstrates how momentum will change over a very small change in time, dt. Here dm represents the change in mass over dt, as well as dv represents the change in velocity over this dt. If we subtract momentum from this equation, we can find the change in momentum, dp. If we assume that there are no external forces, we can solve for delta v, which is our total velocity change over a period of engine use. This value will be used to measure how much fuel we have left. You'll be able to see this at the bottom right of the screen. As you can see on the bottom left of our screen, we have several different delta V's for several different stages. This is our rocket, and as we launch, you can see our heat shield is covering both our cockpit and our lander. Now, as we go higher and higher, air resistance is going to become less and less negligible, so we will perform what is called a gravity turn more and more aggressively. Now, a gravity turn is a turn that you perform within the atmosphere of Earth, so that by the time you get to your peak, you already have a very large horizontal component for your velocity, thus making an orbit is a lot easier. The atmosphere on Kerbin becomes negligible at around 50,000 meters, and totally disappears at 70,000 meters. On Earth, this is called the Kármán line, and it happens at around 100,000 or 100 kilometers. Next, once we get to our highest point, we will burn in such a way that we gain more and more velocity around the Earth, eventually completely creating our orbit. Next, our goal is to head for the Moon, after creating a nice semicircular orbit as close as you can get it. Here, we adjust our orbit so that we can extend it all the way so that it intersects the Moon just a little bit, and then we spin it around until we find a spot where we enter its sphere of influence. Since we're increasing our velocity now, it will eventually turn into gravitational potential energy later on in our orbit. The rate of height gained can be seen right next to the Apoapis label in the Flight Engineer box. The rate of height gained will increase faster and faster the more we burn, not only because height is squarely proportional to velocity, but also because the gravitational pull of Earth gets weaker and weaker the farther we go away. We can't just use g to calculate it since we aren't that close to the Earth anymore. Now we have to get ready to land on the Moon. First, we have to create a maneuver here that just directly counteracts our velocity so that we can get a circular path around the Moon. This is important so that we can send our lander down and have a safe place to keep our rocket while we spend time on the Moon. Now that we're in the moon's orbit, we have to detach our lander from our cockpit and get ready to land. Initially, I'm going to burn in our retrograde direction, which just means burning in the opposite direction of our velocity. This will allow us to slow down and get a nice spot to land at on the moon. Now that we're a little closer though, I'm going to slow down a bit. Even though slowing down here isn't quite efficient, the most efficient way to land a rocket like this on a large body is called a suicide burn. Simply put, a suicide burn is when you wait until the very last second to burn all of your fuel that you need to burn to slow down completely. Now, unfortunately, I don't want to risk losing this ship to a suicide burn like that, and I don't have the numbers like mass or the efficiency and power of these engines to calculate that number, so we're going to just pretend like I did. After landing that rocket like a pro, the only Kerbal that deserves to get the first steps on the moon is our brave pilot, who will also plant the flag while she's down there. But immediately, after setting up our science stuff, we have to get ready to go. We have to make sure we leave just before the satellite we're trying to get to is just above us. This way we have time to catch up to it. Here, as you can see, I'm performing a similar gravity turn to the one we performed on Earth, but far, far more aggressive. And for a couple of reasons. Well, one being is that we could go much lower than on Earth because there's no more atmosphere, so our orbit is much lower. And also because the moon's gravitational pull is far, far weaker. Now here you see me approaching it. I cut it out, but off screen I was able to match its velocity pretty easily when I was close to it. And here you see me burning towards it and then burning away from it. I cut out about 2 hours of me trying to get in front of the ship, match its velocity at the same time, and approach it at just the perfect angle to pull this off. With help from magnets within the couplers, we have reconnected our ship and reunited our friends. Our approach back to Earth is pretty simple. All we are doing is we're accelerating in the prograde direction, which is the same direction as our velocity, until we're able to get out of the sphere of influence of the moon. The sphere of influence is simply where its gravitational pull is most dominant. When we eventually get out of the sphere of influence, we have to create a maneuver to burn retrograde once again. This burn, which is in the retrograde direction, should lower our periapsis until we get an encounter directly with Earth. Now that we are extremely close to Earth, we're going to use the last of our fuel to slow us down. We want to be going as slow as possible through Earth's atmosphere, because if we're going fast enough, our ship could easily burn up in orbit. It is entirely possible when you're traveling at high-speed orbits like this and travel through the atmosphere to burn up in a second. The rest of this travel is our Kerbals just going through the atmosphere, getting carried by Earth's gravitational pull back down to their home, as well as the parachute slowing them down at the very end. I'll play the rest of this at 2 times, 3 times speed for you and play some nice music over it. This is the end of the video, guys. Thanks a ton for watching. Feel free to leave any questions in the comments below, and I'll see you guys next time.